Hi, I'm Andy Hall. I'm the General Manager of Hall Fire and Safety Consultants, a company based in the UK, involved in consultancy in the fire and safety business, as the name implies. In this presentation, I'm talking to John Ottesen, founder, General Manager of DAFO FOMTEC. FOMTEC is a Swedish-based manufacturer of firefighting foams, in business now for 21 years. Manufacturing high-quality, high-performance foams. Today, our specific subject is we're going to look at the transition away from PFAS foams in the airport and aviation sector. So when we look at airports, John, what applications do we have for the use of firefighting foam?
Well, you have the ARF, airport fire rescue, and then you have the protection of the aircraft hangars and the fuel storage. Three different distinct.
They sound like three very different applications.
Oh yes, definitely. ARF is about saving lives, getting people off burning airplanes. It's a very special task. The aircraft hangars you protect with systems protecting multi-million-dollar installation aircrafts. And then the fuel storage is fuel in-depth fires.
So three very different applications. So shall we take each one in turn and talk about fluorine-free foams in each of those missions? Let's start with ARF, because I am aware that this mission, there's quite a number of countries and airports that have already made this transition to fluorine-free foam. I suppose in this application, we're talking about mobile trucks, and obviously we're discharging through monitors and potentially hand lines. So what are the standards and approvals that apply, for determining the type of foams we use in this application?
Well, I think we can sum it up in two different routes. You have the International Civil Aviation Organization, who has their ICAO standard that covers most of the world, Europe, Asia, and elsewhere. And then you have the FAA in the US, who base their requirements on the United States military specification.
Okay, and so where is FOMTEC then with approvals that meet the ICAO requirement?
Well, we have a number of products at the moment with the ICAO approval on a synthetic fluorine-free foam. We have our Enviro USP, which is a multi-approved product. Also has the ICAO level B approval. And then we have the Enviro Air, for instance, which is a low viscous product, also with the ICAO level B approval.
Okay, so basic two products. Your USP, which you've mentioned, is a higher viscosity product, but it's a multi-purpose, has a lot of different applications. So why did you develop the Enviro Air? Was it just viscosity?
I think you're right about that. The Enviro USP is a really high performance multi-approved product, but it does have viscosity, which for some older trucks might be a challenging transition. So we found it reasonable to have an alternative for people who really can't make that transition with a higher viscous product. So that's where air came into the picture.
Okay, interesting. So as we said, that covers most of the world, but obviously we have to talk about North America. So
I guess we have.
The FAA is the governing, authority having jurisdiction. So what do they, what's their stipulation for the ARF mission on commercial airports in the US?
Well, I mean, they do specify the use of a mil-spec foam. And at the moment, those are AFFFs, and there is a new version of mil-spec under development by the DoD and the military, but that's not released yet, so we can't really approve products to that standard at the moment. I think it comes next year, and in fact, Andy, we were a very big part of their research program when they wanted to develop this standard, our EnviroUSP took part of the pre-testing to the Pathfinder testing. They needed to evaluate products, and we were right up there, top 5 of the high performance of that test series.
And what product was that, John?
Well, again, it's an EnviroUSP. Yeah.
So so you said this is a new draft mil spec for fluorine-free foam, but isn't that related to Department of Defense? So how does that tie into the FAA?
Well, the FAA have had their own testing program. They built a new test house. They've done a lot of R&D or testing of commercially available products. At the end of the day, I think they're going to hold their horses and wait until the DoD releases the new mil spec, and then they will probably come back and say, if it's good enough for the military, it's good enough for the airports.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So really, there are Enviro products today which meet the requirements of the ARF mission.
It certainly does, and I would like to mention that our EnviroUSP, it meets all the requirements of the current proposed mil spec, except for one point, and that's the viscosity. The DoD wants a low viscous product. EnviroUSP is a higher viscosity product, but other than that, it meets all the other requirements of the standard, fire performance, and so forth and so on.
So yeah. Fingers crossed a little bit on that one.
Yes.
So moving on, when we let's look at hanger protection, and obviously within hangers we do have some hose handline type systems, but the primary protection in hangers is fixed foam systems. So what are the appropriate standards and approvals governing the use of firefighting foam in hangars?
Well, I think the most prominent one is the 409, the NFPA. Then you can deploy other standards. FM has their own data page on it, I think, for commercial hangars. And you can apply other standards, but I think the 409 and the FM is probably the most prominent ones.
Okay, and within hangars we can use both low expansion and high expansion. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, you can. I mean, you can use a sprinkler or deluge type system. You can use monitors, and you can use grate nozzles, these Viking nozzles in the floor, and you can use a high expansion system.
Right. So let's talk about low expansion. So again, what products is FOMTEC promoting in for these low expansion transitions? And again, what are the approvals that support this?
Well, I think, again, we need to lift up our EnviroUSP. It's the chosen product for fixed systems. It's approved with monitors, non-aspirated monitors. It's approved with an array of different sprinkler heads. We've done a lot of testing to the FM standard at various heights as the FM requires. We have gone as high as we possibly can.
Yeah, obviously in a hangar, height must be very important.
Well, it's
so how high have you managed to do these sprinkler tests, John?
We've gone as high as the building, the test building allows us to go, and that's 45 feet, just under 15 meters. But obviously, we would want to go as high as a real hangar, which is probably 100 feet high, but there's no facility available to do it, so it's a pity.
Well, let me know if you get an opportunity to do a test at 30 meters, 100 feet, because I'll buy my own air ticket.
I will let you know, Andy.
Okay. The other thing, obviously, I'm aware that the FM 5130 for hydrocarbons uses heptane as its reference fuel. As far as I'm aware, there's no heptane in an aircraft hangar. So, is heptane really an appropriate fuel?
Well, I mean, I think having done so many tests as we have done, 1,500 tests and more, a lot of them on heptane. I think it's fair to say heptane is a really difficult fuel to put out. There's no question about it. But I agree with you. I mean, we always say we want data and not opinion. And so we have done testing on Jet A1 in front of FM, and we have approvals coming now in July for sprinkler on Jet A1.
On Jet A1 as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, just adding more data
Definitely.
So that you can say, we know what it does on Jet A1.
That's what you need to know.
Okay, excellent. And as I say, you've talked about the other, you already also have other approvals for non-aspirating monitors, the great nozzles. Let's just touch then on HyX, because obviously HyX has been fluorine-free for some time. So, what have you added to HyX to make it appropriate for this transition?
Well, I think HyX is, you need to test HyX, again, the European approval, the EN 1568 HyX test, it's a Mickey Mouse, it's a baby test. It really can't base a system on it. So we have tested, or in cooperation with Viking, our LS X-Max has been tested to the UL 139 standard, which is a system standard. Where you put fires out with the actual equipment. So I think this holistic approach again, where you couple the foam concentrate with proportioning devices and the actual discharge device, is what we add to the equation with our LS X-Max.
And again, you commented there, and I think we'll just reiterate. So again, you've talked about system approval. So if a client wants, a system approval, then it goes from the storage right the way through to the finished foam.
Yeah, you need proportioning, your foam storage, you need proportioning devices, and you need the approved and tested discharge device, which the UL approval will give you.
Yeah. Interesting. There must be a lot of hangers out there that are going to be looking to transition over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yes, you can imagine this. There's a lot going on already at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, well, nice to hear. Our last application is our fuel storage. Obviously, every airport has to have fuel storage, either within the airport perimeter or fairly close. And then they're either bringing the fuel in by trucks or with a distributed pipe network. But so what we've got here is fuel in depth, and potentially whether it's in the tank, whether it's in the dike. So what are the appropriate design standards and approvals for fluorine-free foam for these applications?
Well, I think the most prominent one is the NFPA 11. You could always use the EN 13565 if you're in Europe. We don't like that. We like the FM approach or the NFPA approach, because it links the foam concentrate with the discharge device, which we know is so crucial. That's totally lacking in the European approach. There's no link between the foam qualities of the foam coming out of the discharge devices there.
So we've talked about this before, which is matching foam qualities from the discharge devices with actual fire testing. So,
well, I want to stress this, it's not the concentrate that puts out the fire. And if you do the testing with a perfect test nozzle, as you do in the EN 1568, how does that correlate with your real world system? Right. It doesn't correlate at all.
Again, and that again, I suppose, is the crucial question in the real world. An operator, who has the jet fuel at an airport with an existing AFFF system, and let's say they're protecting the dike area covering a number of tanks, and they came to you and said, we want to transition to fluorine-free foam. How would you approach that? What would you be saying to them?
Well, first and foremost, you always have to realize it's not about changing the concentrate. It's a holistic approach. You need to look at the discharge device, proportioning as well, obviously, but also importantly, the discharge device. What foam qualities does that system actually give? You can perform a test. If it's a foam maker or a foam chamber, you can compare those test results with what you have on the record from actual fire testing. That's one way of going about it. If you don't need a full-blown end-to-end approval, you can do that. You can take, for instance, our Enviro USP, discharge it through the nozzle they have, check the quality. If it matches, fine. If it doesn't match, you can make some alterations. You can buy equipment that we have already tested with, such as the foam makers and chambers from Viking, and go that way. If you do need an approved system, you need to change out the discharge devices.
Okay, very good. So when we look, we've talked about 3 specific applications. There's the crash rescue, ARF. We've talked about hangar protection. We've talked about fuel storage and distribution. Again, so that same question I come back to. If I approached you today and said, do FOMTEC have solutions for my applications at an airport using fluorine-free foam? Is there a simple yes or a qualified yes?
Well, I think it's a qualified yes, Andy, and that's backed up by real-world approvals. We have done actual approval testing according to qualified standards that involves not only the concentrate, but also the proportioning and the discharge devices, which enabled us to offer approved systems. And, system transitions using our Enviro USP is already happening around the world. And so, yes, absolutely.
Very good to hear. Thank you very much, John.
Thanks, Andy.